on Facebook. Isn't that amazing? And she told me about this unbelievable organization, and I was a teacher, and I also owned an educational learning center for 19 years, and I couldn't wait to come speak to you guys and all of the amazing students. So I'm going to talk to you today about the power of your story. So I have a question for you. What's your earliest memory? Your earliest memory? Yeah, that's me. I grew up in the middle of Nebraska, in the cornfields of Nebraska. You can see the cornfields there behind me on my little pony there. And I want you to think back to your earliest memory. My earliest memory was Christmas morning. I was 8 years old. And I had a little sister. She was 5 years old. We were at my grandparents' house. It was the house right in front where the little pony and I was standing. It was in the dead of winter. We were in the middle of the living room, and we were playing with the toys that we had just opened under the Christmas tree. She had a big picture window that we were looking out. It was snowing outside. It was very cold. We were sitting in front of the fireplace so we could smell the fire, and we were at Grandma's house, and Grandma was cooking the bacon and the eggs. And suddenly there was a knock at the door. And in walked the preacher from our church. I thought that was strange. They lived very far out in the country. And he had us sit down and said, "I need to tell you something." And what happened next, what you don't know, is my mother was in the hospital. She'd been in the hospital for a while. She had cancer. And the preacher said, "Your mother passed away this morning." That was my earliest memory. When you're a little boy, a little girl, and you're growing up and you're bored, you are born with this, you're handed this book. It's a big empty book with white pages. They're empty. And you have all the crayons, all the colors, all the tools that you need to fill this book with amazing and wonderful stories. And you know what the exciting part about it is? You get to write your own story. It's you get to write your own book. And I know what you're probably thinking. I probably didn't write that story in my book, my Christmas morning story, right? But that's okay. Because that's what makes us all unique and special, and it makes our lives an adventure. Anybody like road trips? Who likes going on road trips? Oh my gosh, I love to drive. I have a little pink new Beetle. I don't know if you saw it outside. I love to drive, and I love to put the top down on the convertible and just go, "Oh, I know, I'm just going on an adventure today." And so that is what I just love to do that. So I think of all of our lives as we are on a road trip, right? We're going along the road, and we're having all sorts of adventures. And as we're driving along on the road, we're also keeping a journal of our stories. We're writing our stories as we go along. Okay, we don't get to really drive when we're that little, right? But we usually, when we're bored and we're little and we're in a child trip, we have someone else, like your parents that are out here. They're driving the car. But because we're humans and because we actually have a brain, we get to determine how we tell our stories and what happens to us, and decide how we're going to write the chapters in our book. And then a little later, we get to take the steering wheel, okay? Anybody feel like this? Any parents? No? The kids, yes, I'm driving. Okay, so when you're a little older, like what you guys that are seniors in high school, you get to take the steering wheel now. You're going to start taking the steering wheel. You got a little help and everything, and they're helping you guide your story. But you get to start really writing it yourself. Now this is my friend Susan. She's actually right here. I'm filming me. Oh, I'm on Facebook Live. Anyway, Susan, I wanted to tell her story today because she graduated, listen to you guys, imagine graduating from high school in 1961. How long ago was that?
Oh, just kidding.
Come on, math. I know I have some on my table over there. How many years ago was that? 56 years ago. Can you imagine being where you are 56 years ago? Well, things were a lot different then. And I see a lot of people that have their phones tonight. Well, just put them away, because just pretend that it was 1961 and you are getting ready to go to college. Here's what happened to Miss Susan here. she ran to her parents and she said, Mom and Dad, I'm going to college and I'm going to be an engineer. And her dad said, I don't think so. Girls can't be engineers. You can only be a teacher or a nurse. That's your only choice. Can you imagine that? Oh my gosh. And she said, really? She goes, and he said, well, it doesn't matter anyway because there's no money to go to college. And she said, well, I thought we got money. And he said, well, yeah, you have 3 brothers. They're each getting $20,000. She said, okay, why? Well, they have to go to college and get an education so they can support their families. And she said, well, what about us girls? And he said, well, your 2 sisters and you each get $2,000. She said, what? He goes, yeah, to pay for the wedding. And she said, I don't think so. I'm not getting married right now. I'm going to college. And he said, well, you're going to have to figure it out. And she did. That's exactly what she did. She went to nursing school, and she figured out how to go to college on $2,000. Can you imagine that? So, like I said, when you're young, you have to maybe decide which road you're going to travel on. And you might have to decide what the next chapter of your life is. But what's so exciting about that is you get to decide. Now, the road is not normally just straight and narrow. That would be very boring, wouldn't it? Getting on a road trip and just I'm taking this straight road and it's going straight and there's no excitement around. And what about movies? Movies and TV shows and books, wouldn't they be boring if nothing terrible happened? You know, and there weren't any characters that had to figure out how to fix the problem in the story. And you might come up to some dead ends. So you're on this road trip of life, right? And it's not straight and narrow. It's kind of windy, kind of fun, but you might come to one of these things in the road. You might come to a fork in the road where you're going this way, and it's not quite where you want to go, and you need to go the other way. Sometimes you might hit a dead end. Anybody ever hit a dead end in their life? May I tell you my dead end story? Okay. So my dead end story started when my marriage ended. I had been married to a musician for 13 years, and I had given up my teaching position, and I started really helping him with his music career, and I helped him on his road and helped him with his story and make sure that his dreams were coming true. So I was kind of sad and kind of lonely, and I wasn't quite sure. I knew that that chapter in my life was over, and I wasn't quite sure where to start my next chapter. And then something happened. I was at the grocery store, and I was getting groceries, and I was headed home. I was driving down the street, and I had to get home to put my groceries away, and I happened to be fostering a little kitten. He was a little teeny tiny 1-week-old kitten. He looked like a little white rat, so I named him Stuart Little. He was so cute. His mother had died. She had died when he was born. So I was headed home to feed little Stuart, put my groceries away, and I was driving up, and I got to a intersection. And the light was red, and then it turned green. I started through the intersection. Bam! I was hit by a truck. Literally. In way more ways than one. So talk about a dead end. I hit that dead end. I was in the hospital for 3 weeks. I was lying in that hospital bed, trying to figure out which way I'm supposed to go. Which road am I supposed to take now? Which chapter am I supposed to write now? And at that time, I felt very alone. Like I didn't have really anything to live for at that point. And then I opened my eyes. And I opened my eyes, and to this day when I tell the story, I can just see the people in my room right now, in my hospital room. There was all these people that were in there because they cared about me. And you know what? They were there to help me write my story. They were helping me. They wanted to help me write my next chapter in my story. That was my little bug. It was in a lot of magazines. So, your story can take a lot of turns, right? Twists and turns, dead ends, and you figure out what's going to happen next. But the struggle, the things that you go through, they're a part of your story. They make each and every single one of you completely unique. And you know what? There's not one person on this planet like you. And I know you might hear that, but really think about that. Nobody has been born at the exact same moment and been through the exact same things and had the exact same experiences in your life. Your story is so important. It is so important to tell. Think about Susan and when she went to college. None of us are going to know what it was like to go through what she went through and live the life that she lived in the 1960s. It's her job to write her story and her legacy to pass on to her kids and her grandkids. It's your job to tell your story. You need to tell it. It's that important. And even you guys that are in high school, you need to start writing your story right now. You should all be keeping a journal and keeping track of what's happening in your lives and know that you can change your story anytime you want to. Is that exciting? There's another reason you need to tell your story. I love this thing here. It is, you can actually inspire someone to be a better person. You might even inspire someone enough to save their life. So I want to tell you something. So I didn't think my story was that important. After that happened, I thought, well, big deal. I had a divorce and I was in a car accident. Whoop-de-doo, right? Didn't think it was important. A little bit later, I don't know, a few months after I was in the car accident, I still had, my jaw was wired shut and I was in and out of a wheelchair, walking with a cane. I have a lot of titanium and metal in me. You wouldn't know it. But I was at a restaurant. And all of a sudden, this girl rolls up to me in a wheelchair. And it was the craziest thing. She had a book in her hand with her picture on it and her name on the book. And she was beautiful. She was like, I don't know, a young woman, 20s or 30s. And she came up to me and she told me her story of getting in a car with a drunk driver, and where they were in a car accident, and she broke her back and her neck, and she was paralyzed for the rest of her life. But she was smiling and happy, and she had her book, and she'd been speaking and talking to people and inspiring them to do better. And I thought, well, that's really interesting. And then, I don't know, a couple of years later, I kind of forgot about that, and for the first time, somebody asked me to speak to a group of businesswomen. They wanted me to speak because I had a tutoring center, an educational center. I owned a tutoring center in San Diego. I built a bunch of businesses, and they said, "You come and speak to these women." And I said, "Well, what do you want me to talk about?" And they said, "We want you to tell your story." And I said, "Why don't they want to hear my story?" And they said, "No, you need to tell your story." So I said, "Okay, fine." So I got up on stage for the first time, and I went through and I told my story, my dead-end story with the car and the divorce, and then how at 44 years old, going through the divorce, I had absolutely no money in the bank, none, at age 44. And I figured out how to start a business, and I figured out how to hire people and how to grow an educational learning center and help kids and inspire kids that maybe grew up without a mother, inspire kids to start businesses, to do better in their life. And I got off of the stage, and the weirdest thing happened. All these people came up to me. I got phone calls, I got texts, I got emails. They came up to me and they said, "Sue, oh my gosh, you're so inspiring. You inspired me to do better in my life." And I thought, what is this? I still didn't get it. And then I thought back to the girl in the wheelchair. And I thought, well, her story was really compelling. And here's what I figured out. Not very many people understood or could really relate to someone who was in a wheelchair that had been paralyzed. There's very few people, anybody here can understand what it's like to be in a wheelchair. Not very many people. But how many people really know what it feels like to be left alone, to be divorced, or to get hurt, or be in a car accident, or have something happen to where you hit that dead end? So it was as a light bulb that went off. Your story is so important because you can impact a lot of lives. So I want to know, what's your story? When would now be soon enough to write your story in your book and inspire people and change people's lives? It is your job to do that. This is a napkin that someone handed to me one day when I stood up and I was at a networking group, and they said, "Tell how you started your business," and I told my story, and the lady handed me, this is a picture of the actual napkin she handed to me, and it said, you have a story that needs to be told. And it just gave me chills, and I thought, wow, that's amazing. And I want you to pretend right now that I'm handing you a napkin with this saying on it. Every single one of you has a story that must be told. It's your job. This right here, the book that will most change your life is the book that you're going to write. And it's not about just inspiring people. When you take the story out of your head and you actually physically put it on paper, it will change your life, I promise you. You will be able to put it on paper, read it, look at it, and realize that it's just a story, and you can do whatever you want with it. You can change, you can write another chapter, you can go on a different trip. There's so many things you can do when you write your story. Today, we are looking for authors. I help people publish their books, write their stories. I have these books on this side over here are compilation books where you can actually just write one chapter in a book and you can still be a best-selling author and you can have your picture on the cover, or you can write your own book. So because of this amazing organization and because I'm so proud of all of you guys that have gotten great grades and you're all here today, any of you that want to publish a book with us, we will donate a portion of the publishing fees back to the organization. So I hope you guys will really think about it. There's a table out front where you can put your name and your contact information, and we will let you know how you can do that. Second of all, this goes out to especially the students. We have a mission to go to retirement homes, 55 and over retirement homes, and we want these people to tell their stories. We want to hear them to tell their stories and write their books and share it and keep their legacy. We do not want their stories to die with them. So we're looking for volunteers, any of you that like to go with us to some of these places, interview some of these people, and help write their story. Anybody be interested in that at all? Any of you students? Awesome. So I hope you guys will really do this. I want you to get a journal, start writing your story, and come talk to us afterwards. And I thank you so much for allowing me to take up your time today.
Raffle.
Oh, we're also having a raffle, by the way, for a free chapter in the next book. So make sure you fill out the form before you leave tonight on your way out. Thank you.